Hi everyone, and welcome to our video on nonfiction text structures. Make sure that you have your notebook set up correctly. You should have your video visa on the left side, ready to use to reflect on the video after we're done, and your note taker on the right. Make sure you're following along and using the video to accurately complete your notes. Everything that I have on the screen should be in your notes the same way that I have it. Pause the video to give you time to write, and make sure you use your best handwriting so that when you look back on your notes, you can actually read them. And rewatch the video at least once just to make sure you didn't miss anything important. So we are talking about nonfiction text structures. First off, we need to remember that a nonfiction text is a text that gives you information, true factual information about a topic. When we say text structure, we just mean that we are trying to figure out how the author organized that information. The text structure of a certain text will just depend on the topic and the purpose for the author writing about that topic. Depending on what they're trying to get across and what subject matter they're using will determine the text structure. So we're going to go over 6 common structures. I'm going to give you the definition of each. That will be written at the top of the box for each of them. Then I'm going to give you some signal words. These are just words and phrases that you might want to look out for while you're reading to help you determine the structure. And then you have some visuals that help you just picture what the organization might look like. So with that, let's get started with cause and effect. You see the graphic right there, and what that is showing is that there's several events and what caused them to happen. It can actually also be just one big main event and give you different causes. Remember that when we say the cause, we're talking about why something happened. So some signal words to look out for are cause, because, as a result, due to, and for this reason. All of these point to explaining why something happened or the result of something happening. It's important to remember that these signal words, it doesn't mean that these signal words have to be in there, and it doesn't mean all of them are going to be in there. You might see other synonyms for these words as well, because of course they're not going to repeat the same words over and over. An author that is experienced that wants to make an engaging writing uses synonyms for words to give it a little variety. So it's just important that you know what these mean and that you know what to look for in the text, an event and why it happened. Now we have compare and contrast. The visual you have here is a Venn diagram. I'm sure you're familiar with these. In the center, it talks about the similarities between two things, and on the outside, it talks about their differences. And that's basically what compare and contrast is, the similarities and differences between two things, people, ideas, etc., just depending on what it is that the author is comparing. But it always has to have more than one, because it's got to tell you how two things or more are similar and how they are different. Some signal words to look out for is both have, or both do, both think, etc. In contrast to, and how they are similar or are different. And remember, again, there might be synonyms for some of these. Doesn't mean all of them will be included, but this is a good way to start thinking about compare and contrast, that it's going to help you look for those clues to decide if this is how the author organized their information or not. Next, we have sequential. As you see here in the graphic, this is going from one thing to the next to the next. These are events in chronological order. That means they are in order of what happened first, next, then last. Or they are steps in a process. This is a very common structure when you're talking about a how-to text, right? It's giving you the steps. This can even be when it's talking about a historical event, if it's the purpose of telling you about that event is to tell you the order in which it happened. Okay. You might see some signal words that include things like first, next, then, finally. You'll see steps given. And you might see dates in order. Again, this just depends on the topic of the text and the purpose for which it's being presented. Then we have classification. The graphic here shows that you have one big main topic that's broken up into several groups. And then everything within that group will share certain characteristics. So it's several things arranged in groups according to their characteristics. So you'll have group 1, group 2, group 3, and then everything in group 1 will have something in common. Everything in group 2 will have something else in common. And everything in group 3 will have something else in common. But all 3 of them will belong to one big main group. Some signal words to look out for are the characteristics, an example, because it's giving you an example of why they belong in this group or that group, and for instance. That's just another way to say example. Now we have description and explanation. The reminder graphic here shows that in the center you would have the main topic, and then around it you would have all the different descriptions or explanations of how that topic is. So these are details given about a topic to help the reader paint a picture in their head. Some signal words are, you might see many adjectives. Those are words that describe a noun, so you might see a lot of them when they're describing a certain topic. Other descriptive words or phrases, or you have just facts given that explain or describe how that topic is. And then finally, we have problem and solution. You see here that little circle with an X, that's a problem is not something you want. And then the solution is what makes you happy. So this is where a problem is presented and its solution is described. You might see some signal words like problem, the issue with, a solution, to solve, or consequently. All of those deal with either the problem or the solution. Remember, of course, synonyms to these words might be ones that you want to look out for, but this is a good way to frame your thinking to help you look for that structure. So now your note taker looks like this. You have all of your definitions, your explanations of each structure, and some signal words to look out for. When you're reading a nonfiction text, it's really important to think about how the author organized their information, but more importantly, why. How did that organization help get their message across? How did it help you better understand the text? And that's really what you want to do when you're thinking about these structures. It has to go beyond just identifying them, but deciding why they were chosen and how they impact your comprehension. So make sure your notes are accurately completed, that you've completed your visa to help you reflect on the video, that you post your part A, which is to ask a question in Google Classroom or wherever else your teacher has asked you to do so, and that you are ready to discuss the video and apply the skill. And like I said, remember, when we apply the skill, it has to go beyond just identifying it, but thinking about how it impacts the comprehension and why the author made the choice to organize it in that certain way. So once you have all of that done, you're ready to go.